According to RBC report, renters are having a harder time accumulating wealth than homeowners, as Canadian renters are devoting majority share of their income towards housing costs as compared to homeowners. Just to clarify, this report is Canada-wide, therefore different markets of the country might have different situations. So that's something we need to keep an eye out on. So in this video, I'm going to go through this report put out by Royal Bank of Canada suggesting renters are being squeezed to a greater extent and homeownership has become extremely difficult. My name is Amrit. I make educational content around real estate in the city of Toronto. And if you like this type of content, then please smash that like button and please subscribe to the channel. That really helps. And if you have any questions about real estate, you can book a call with me by clicking on the Calendly link mentioned in the description below. Now let's check out and see what this article is actually suggesting. So here's the article with the headline saying Canadian renters are getting squeezed more than homeowners, putting the property ladder further out of reach. It also goes on to say residential real estate drove almost half of the wealth gained over the past 3 decades. So that's a pretty interesting statement. Now let's check out the article and deep dive into it. Further, it goes on to say the housing crisis in this country has hit all Canadian, but no one as hard as renters, argues the new report from Royal Bank of Canada. It also says the high cost of acquiring a home combined with the rising cost of living have blocked more Canadians from accessing a property ladder that has been primary source of accumulating wealth in this country for the past 30 years, says RBC Economist. I totally agree with this, that the cost of living has gone up, especially in the bigger cities like Toronto and Vancouver, where the rents are significantly high. For example, let me just show you the chart for the average rent all across Canada. So the average rent all across Canada for all property types we're looking at is $2,200 a month, and the rents you're looking in the city of Toronto for a one-bedroom condo is about $2,300 to $2,400 a month. Although in the Greater Toronto area and in downtown Toronto, the rents have slightly come down by like $100 or a couple of $100 give and take, and that is primarily due to increase in supply of condos from a newly constructed condos which were recently built and were delivered into the market. So that's some encouraging news. But overall, I agree that the cost of living has gone up, and which is not making any easier for first-time homebuyer or renters to save some money on the side for their next home. Now let's go back to the article and see what they're further saying. So next up, this is a bit of a repeat what we saw on the headline. So it goes on, Canadian renters are getting squeezed more than homeowners, making homeownership even more a distant dream. This threatens the paths to accumulating wealth, which could exacerbate inequality over the longer term. Further, it goes on to say that the gains renters are missing out on are substantial. So I kind of agree, and at the same time, I don't agree with the statement, because first reason being that over here, they're throwing a narrative of fear of missing out on property ownership. So in the past year or two, I don't think so there have been massive appreciation. So I do not think so anyone has missed out on any substantial gains. So that's number one. Number two, in today's time, when the rate of interest is already so high, and if you're someone who have not collected significant amount of down payment, then in that case, your monthly carrying cost of the property is going to be pretty high. Let me show you quick examples just for your reference. So just as an example, let's say you plan to buy a property worth $550,000, and in Greater Toronto area, you can only find a condo at that price point. So we're looking at, if you put down minimum down payment of 5.5%, and second option is you put down 10%, then your monthly carrying cost we're looking at is $30,080 and $2,900 give and take. But on top of this, you also need to consider the maintenance fees, because it's a condo. So the maintenance fees we're looking at is about $400. So your monthly carrying cost we're looking at is about $3,400. And if you put down minimum down payment, and if you put down 10%, that is scenario, then your monthly carrying cost we're looking at is about $3,300 more or less. But you also need to consider your property taxes and closing costs. So it all adds up. So if you're in this situation where you're putting down maybe 5.5% or 10%, it's better to rent, in my opinion, because you can find a one-bedroom condo for about $2,300 in the Greater Toronto area, or in fact in downtown Toronto as well. And if you're in this situation where you have a down payment of 15% or 20% or more, then it makes sense, in my opinion, to jump into home ownership. So next, they're saying almost half of household wealth accumulated in Canada over the past 3 decades have been driven by residential real estate. It also goes on to say since the end of 2010, homeowners' net worth grown from 9 times disposable income to 13 times. And during that same period, renters' net worth grew from 3 times to 3.5 times. Let me quickly show you a 30-year-old average home prices chart just to back this up. So here we go. So here are the average prices of all property types since 1975 to 2024. And if we study the 30-year data, that is from 1990 to 2020, you can see there's been a massive run up in prices. And if we break down this 30-year data in 3 decades, so let's analyze what's happened over there. So from 1990 to 2000, you can see the prices have come from $251,000, $243,000. The prices are more or less stable and over this 10 period term. And after 2000 to 2010, we can see there's been a pretty good run up. The prices have almost doubled. In 2000, you can see the prices we're looking at is at $243,000, and in 2010 you can see the prices over here, it's $431,000. So the prices have doubled over this period. And if we assess the data from 2010 to 2020, again we can see a pretty good run up over here in prices, and the prices have again kind of doubled. So in 2010, you can see the prices we're looking at is $431,000, and in 2020, the prices we're looking at is $929,000. So especially the period between 2010 to 2020, we saw a pretty massive appreciation, which is right over here. And I don't think so going forward from 2020 to 2030, we might not see this kind of appreciation. There will be appreciation. I'm not saying that there will be no appreciation. There will be appreciation in my opinion, but I don't see this kind of appreciation or this kind of massive appreciation what we saw in the period from 2010 to 2020. Okay, so now let's go back to the article. Next is lower earnings and higher allocation to housing make it exceptionally difficult for renters to save for their down payment, a crucial step in the path to wealth accumulation. About 2/3 of Canada's population owned residential real estate in 2022, but this is changing as affordability worsens. So this is also due to higher interest rates, because whenever the interest rate increases, people tend to stay away from buying or getting into real estate or home ownership, and they tend to rent. So as the demand for renting increases, so the prices also go up. Next, it goes on to say it has never been more difficult to get into housing market. So as a first-time home buyer, I totally get it. It's not that easy to get into home ownership, especially without family support. I've been on the same boat, and at times it feels helpless when you look at those ridiculous price point properties. But to be honest, I would suggest to control the controllable. First, I would advise to cut down your expenses or housing expenses in whatever capacity you can. Especially if you're someone who are in your 20s, I would advise to stay away or renting out one-bedroom condo and instead rent a two-bedroom condo with the roommate. Having a roommate, I agree, it's not an ideal situation. I've done that in past, and at times it really sucks. But doing so, it really allowed me to cut my expenses in half, and it allowed me to start saving some money on the side for my down payment. My second recommendation would be to get into a partnership or a joint venture with the like-minded person. This will allow you to get into the market and also will give you more access to a mortgage. And at the same time, you'll be under less pressure of collecting that substantial down payment. So that's pretty much for today. Let me know what you think about this article in the comments below. I would love to know your thoughts. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.